Did you know that some of the most powerful wisdom for navigating life's challenges comes from a group of thinkers who lived over 2,000 years ago? If you want to find peace, resilience, and purpose in today's fast-paced world, you need to embrace the timeless principles of Stoicism. The best part: these ancient ideas aren't just for philosophers, they're practical tools you can apply to your life right now. But here's the catch. Most of us are making a huge mistake without even realizing it. We're chasing external validation, resisting change, and letting our emotions control our reactions. Avoid this mistake if you want to master the art of letting go, live with intention, and thrive no matter what life throws at you. In this video, I'm going to break down the core Stoic principles that can transform the way you approach every day. Trust me, once you start applying these ideas, you'll never look at life the same way again. Ready to dive in? Let's get started. Number 1. Mastering the art of letting go. A modern take on ancient Stoicism. Let's start with a simple question. How many times have you felt weighed down by things you just can't control? Think about it for a second. Maybe it's that moment your perfectly planned weekend trip gets cancelled because of bad weather, or when you're stuck in traffic watching the minutes tick away as your stress levels rise. We've all been there. Our first instinct is to get frustrated, to hold on to that irritation. But what if I told you that letting go, really letting go, could change your life? Now take a deep breath. Imagine being able to shake off that weight, those frustrations, as easily as you might shake off rain from your jacket. Feels good, right? The ancient Stoics knew this feeling, and they built their philosophy around it. Their wisdom teaches us that letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means mastering the art of release. It's about finding freedom in realizing what's truly under your control and what isn't. Picture this. You're at a coffee shop. It's a quiet Saturday morning and you've finally carved out some time to relax. But just as you're about to take that first satisfying sip of your favorite drink, your phone buzzes. Work email. You feel the tightness in your chest, the sudden rush of anxiety. This wasn't part of the plan, and now your peaceful moment feels ruined. But here's where Stoicism steps in. Instead of getting tangled up in frustration, what if you could pause, recognize the feeling, and just let it drift away? Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, would say this: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. It's a simple, profound truth, one that's just as relevant in today's fast-paced, always connected world as it was in ancient Rome. Think back to a time when you held on to something longer than you should have. A grudge, a missed opportunity, maybe even a mistake that felt too big to shake off. We all have those moments where the past haunts us, where we cling to what could have been. And yet, when you think about it now in hindsight, doesn't it seem like wasted energy? Like you were carrying around extra baggage that didn't need to be there. That's the thing about letting go. It's not about ignoring reality or pretending things don't matter. It's about shifting your focus from what you can't change to what you can. And here's the curious part. When you stop holding so tightly onto things that are out of your control, you actually begin to feel lighter, freer. You open up space in your life for what really matters. It's a paradox that's deeply embedded in Stoic thought. The less you try to control everything, the more control you actually have over your own peace of mind. So the next time life throws you a curveball, a cancelled plan, a spilled coffee, an unexpected change, remember this: letting go is a skill. It takes practice. But once you start mastering it, you'll notice something incredible. Life becomes less about fighting against the current and more about flowing with it. And that's when the real magic happens. Number 2, control the controllable. Why your reactions matter. More than events. Let's talk about control. Something we all crave, right? We like to feel like we have a handle on things, like we can steer the ship of our lives through any storm. And most of the time we can. But then life has a funny way of reminding us that we're not always in the driver's seat. Whether it's a last-minute work deadline or a family emergency, things pop up that we just can't predict. And when that happens, our natural response is to feel stress, frustration, maybe even anger. But here's the kicker. The Stoics believed that while we can't always control the events that happen to us, we can absolutely control how we respond to them. In fact, they thought that our reactions were the only things truly under our control. Imagine this. You're driving to work, already running late, and suddenly there's a huge traffic jam. You're stuck, barely moving, and you feel the panic rising. Sound familiar? In that moment, what do? You could slam your hands on the steering wheel, yell at the cars in front of you, curse the situation. But let's pause for a second. Is that reaction going to clear the road? Is it going to make the traffic move faster? Now, picture the same scenario, but instead of reacting with anger, you take a deep breath. You accept that the traffic is something beyond your control. You turn on your favorite podcast, sit back, and decide that this is a moment you can't change, but you can control your mindset. Suddenly, the frustration melts away, and while the traffic is still there, it's no longer the enemy. You're in control, not of the situation, but of your reaction to it. Seneca, another great Stoic, once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Think about that for a moment. How many times have you been in a situation where the thing that stressed you out the most wasn't the event itself, but your anticipation of it? Like when you have a big presentation and you spend days worrying about all the things that could go wrong. By the time the day arrives, you've already lived through the disaster in your mind 100 times. But then, when it's over, you realize it wasn't nearly as bad as you imagined. This is exactly what Stoicism teaches us. It's not the external events that disturb us, but how we perceive and react to them. And here's where it gets personal. Think back to a time when you overreacted to something. Maybe it was a small argument with a friend or a work task that didn't go as planned. In the heat of the moment, it felt like the world was crashing down. But now, looking back, it's almost laughable how much energy you spent on something so minor. The Stoics knew this truth all too well. They understood that the key to living a peaceful, resilient life wasn't about controlling the world around you. It was about controlling your inner world. They believed that our emotional reactions are like the steering wheel of a car. If we let our emotions take over, we end up swerving all over the road, crashing into things that don't matter. But if we learn to control that steering wheel, we can navigate through even the roughest patches with grace. Curious how this applies to your life? Start by paying attention to your reactions the next time something goes wrong. Notice the urge to get angry or upset. Then ask yourself, is this within my control? If the answer is no, take a breath and let it go. You'll be surprised at how quickly your perspective shifts when you stop trying to control the uncontrollable. Number 3, living in the now, embrace the present and ditch the distractions. Let's face it, we live in a world of constant distractions. Notifications buzzing, emails flooding in, social media pulling at our attention. It's like we're always one step ahead or one step behind, never fully here, in the moment. Sound familiar? You're not alone. In fact, it's something we all struggle with, especially in this digital age. But here's a thought. What if we could slow down, even for a moment, and truly experience what's happening around us? What if we could embrace the present without worrying about the future or regretting the past? That's the essence of Stoicism. It's about being fully present, right here, right now. Picture this. You're out with friends, having dinner, but instead of enjoying the conversation, your mind is elsewhere. You're thinking about that project at work, or maybe you're replaying a conversation from earlier in the day. You're physically there, but mentally you're miles away. Now think back to how many moments like this have slipped through your fingers, moments where you could have been fully present, but instead you were caught up in thoughts about things that weren't even happening yet. The Stoics had a word for this: apatheia. It means freedom from being disturbed by things beyond your control, and it's closely tied to the idea of living in the present. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor and one of the most famous Stoics, once said, "Do not let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which arm you against the present." It's a beautiful thought, isn't it? That by focusing on the present, we arm ourselves with the tools to handle the future, whatever it may bring. But here's where it gets nostalgic. Remember those moments from your childhood when time seemed to stretch on forever. Maybe it was a lazy summer afternoon or a family trip to the beach. Back then, you weren't worrying about what was next. You were just there, fully immersed in the moment. As we get older, it feels like those moments become rarer, like we've forgotten how to just be present. We're so busy planning the future or reflecting on the past that we lose sight of the now. But here's the good news. It's never too late to reclaim that presence. You can start small. The next time you're with someone, put your phone away. Listen, really listen to what they're saying. Notice the sounds around you, the hum of conversation, the clink of glasses, the sound of your own breathing. In that moment, you're not worrying about what's. Number 4, accepting change, navigating life's inevitable twists and turns. Change. It's one of those things we all know is inevitable, yet it's something many of us resist. Whether it's a career shift, the end of a relationship, or even moving to a new city, change can feel unsettling. We crave stability, routine, and the comfort of the familiar. But deep down, we also know that nothing in life stays the same for long. Let's start with a scene we can all relate to. You're at work and suddenly there's an announcement, a restructuring, a new boss, maybe even layoffs. That knot in your stomach forms almost instantly, doesn't it? The uncertainty starts to gnaw at you, and before you know it, you're lost in a whirlwind of what-ifs. What if I lose my job? What if I can't find another one? What if my whole life gets turned upside down? It's natural to feel this way. Change, especially when it's unexpected, can feel like the ground is shifting beneath your feet. But the Stoics had a different perspective. They believed that change isn't something to fear, it's something to accept, even embrace. Epictetus, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers, once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." In other words, change itself isn't the problem. Our resistance to it is. The more we fight against the inevitable, the more we suffer. Let's take a moment to reflect on that. Think back to a time in your life when something major changed. Maybe it was when you graduated from college, when you had to move away from home, or when a relationship ended. At the time, it probably felt overwhelming, maybe even heartbreaking. But now, looking back, how do you feel about that change? Did it lead to something better? Did it push you to grow in ways you didn't expect? We often forget that some of the most transformative moments in our lives come from change. It's uncomfortable, sure, but it's also necessary. Just like the seasons shift from summer to fall or winter to spring, our lives move through cycles. And as the Stoics taught, it's pointless to resist these natural cycles. Now think about the future. We know change is coming, whether we like it or not. But here's the curious part. What if, instead of dreading it, we started to see change as an opportunity? What if we viewed each twist and turn not as a disruption, but as a chance to evolve? It's a mindset shift that takes time, but once you start seeing change as a constant companion rather than a threat, life becomes a little less daunting. So the next time you find yourself facing an unexpected detour, whether it's a new job, a move, or even a personal loss, remember this: change is not your enemy. It's part of the natural flow of life. And just like the Stoics taught, the key to navigating change is not in trying to stop it, but in learning to ride the waves with grace. Number 5, free yourself from external validation, finding worth within. Let's be honest. In today's world, it's easier than ever to get caught up in external validation. We live in an era of likes, shares, comments, and followers, where it feels like our self-worth is constantly being measured by how others respond to us. Whether it's on social media, at work, or even among friends, there's this pressure to perform, to be seen, and to be validated by those around us. But let's take a step back. How often do we find ourselves scrolling through Instagram, seeing someone else's highlight reel and feeling a pang of envy? Or posting something and then checking back every few minutes to see how many likes we've gotten? It's a cycle that can leave us feeling empty, like we're constantly chasing approval, but never quite catching it. The Stoics had a lot to say about this. They believed that true happiness and contentment come from within, not from what others think of us. Epictetus, in particular, was clear on this point. Man is not worried by real problems, so much as by his imagined anxieties about real problems. When we rely on external validation for our sense of worth, we're essentially giving away our power. We're letting the opinions of others dictate how we feel about ourselves. Think about it. How many times have you allowed a single comment, a lack of likes, or someone else's success to make you feel less than? Now think back to a time when you accomplished something. Maybe you finished a project, hit a fitness goal, or learned a new skill. How did you feel in that moment? Proud, right? And here's the key question. Was that pride dependent on how many people acknowledged it, or did it come from within, from knowing you had done something meaningful? We all have those moments in life where we seek validation from others, whether it's through our social media presence, in our jobs, or in our personal relationships. It's natural. But here's the thing. Chasing after other people's approval is like trying to catch the wind. It's always fleeting, always just out of reach. The Stoics understood that the only validation that truly matters is the one that comes from within. Here's where the nostalgic part comes in. Remember when you were a kid and you didn't care so much about what others thought? You were just yourself, unapologetically. Whether you were building forts, drawing pictures, or playing outside, you were in your own world, happy with who you were. Somewhere along the way, as we grow up, we lose a bit of that. We start to care more about what others think of us than what we think of ourselves. But what if we could get some of that back? What if we could start measuring our worth not by how many likes we get or how much praise we receive, but by how aligned we are with our own values, our own sense of self? Curious. Start small. The next time you find yourself seeking approval, whether it's through a post, a conversation, or a job well done, pause. Ask yourself, am I doing this for me or for others? And if the answer is for others, gently remind yourself that true worth comes from within. You don't need anyone else's validation to know your value. Number 6, growth through adversity. Transform challenges into opportunities. Now let's talk about adversity. It's something we all face, no matter who we are or where we come from. Maybe it's a difficult boss, financial struggles, or a health issue. Life throws challenges at us, often when we least expect them. And when those challenges hit, it's easy to feel like the world is against us, like we're being dealt a hand we didn't ask for. But here's where the Stoics offer some profound wisdom. Seneca, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers, believed that adversity wasn't just something to endure, it was something to grow from. He once said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." In other words, just like physical exercise strengthens our muscles, challenges strengthen our minds and spirits. Let's make this relatable. Think about a time in your life when you faced a major obstacle. Maybe it was a job loss, a tough breakup, or a health scare. At the time, it probably felt overwhelming, like you'd never get through it. But now, looking back, can you see how that experience shaped you? How it made you stronger, more resilient, maybe even more compassionate? That's the curious part about adversity. While it's happening, it feels unbearable. But once you're on the other side, you realize it was the very thing that helped you grow. The Stoics believed that every challenge, no matter how difficult, carries within it the seeds of opportunity. It's all about perspective. Instead of asking, "Why me?" when something bad happens, they would encourage us to ask, "What can I learn from this?" or "How can this make me better?" It's a subtle shift, but it changes everything. Think of it like this. Life is like a personal trainer. Every time we face adversity, it's like lifting a heavier weight. It's tough, it's uncomfortable, and sometimes it feels like too much. But with each rep, we get stronger. Our capacity to handle life's challenges grows. Now, think back to when you were a kid. Remember how frustrated you used to get when things didn't go your way? Maybe you struggled with a school project, or you couldn't figure out how to ride a bike at first. But eventually, with practice, you got it. And in that moment, when you finally succeeded, didn't it feel amazing? That's the beauty of adversity. It's hard, but when you push through, the sense of accomplishment is like no other. The Stoics understood this deeply. They didn't shy away from challenges. They welcomed them. They believed that the tougher the obstacle, the greater the opportunity for growth. And while it's not easy to see that in the moment, with time and perspective, you realize that those hardships were the very things that made you who you are today. So the next time you're faced with a challenge, whether it's a difficult conversation, a setback at work, or something more personal, remember this: adversity is not here to break you. It's here to make you stronger. It's life's way of helping you grow. And if you approach it with the right mindset, every challenge becomes an opportunity in disguise. Number 7, reflection and realignment, the key to a life of purpose and peace. Let's begin with a scene we're all too familiar with. It's late at night and you're lying in bed. The room is quiet, but your mind, it's racing. You're thinking about everything you did that day, what you should have done differently, and what tomorrow holds. Maybe you're replaying an awkward conversation in your head, or going over your to-do list for the next morning. Sound familiar? We've all been there. It's a cycle, one that keeps us up at night and leaves us feeling restless. In a world that never seems to slow down, where we're constantly bombarded with tasks, notifications, and responsibilities, it's easy to lose track of ourselves. We get so caught up in the daily grind that we forget to pause and check in with the one person who matters most, ourselves. And this is where the Stoic practice of reflection and realignment comes in. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic philosophers and Roman emperors, believed that regular self-reflection was essential to living a good life. He said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." In other words, if we want to live a life of peace and purpose, we need to take time to reflect on our thoughts, our actions, and our direction. Let's get real for a moment. How often do you take time out of your day to just reflect? Not just scrolling through social media, but really sitting down and thinking about where you're headed, what you've done, and whether or not it aligns with who you want to be, if you're like most people. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought. If you've made it this far, you're part of a rare group of people who are truly committed to changing their lives. Drop 100 in the comments if you've watched this far. This shows you're one of the few who actually follow through and invest in their growth. In a world filled with distractions, staying focused on personal development is a game changer. If you're serious about living with purpose, embracing Stoic wisdom, and transforming your life from the inside out, make sure to join our community by subscribing to the channel. Together, We'll continue this journey of self-improvement and create a life full of peace, clarity, and intention. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.